Hey there, friend. Good morning. It is 5:12 a.m. and we are about to get started with this morning's mobility session. Thanks for dropping by, and I'm going to just explain a couple of things, and then we're going to get started. My name's Toby. I am 41 years old, and I train to live an active, self-sufficient, and adventurous life. I do so by minding my sleep, minding what I eat, and trying to move frequently, often, and in varied ways. I try to sleep 7 to 9 hours in a night. Tonight was 7.5, which seems to be about the average. On a good day, I might get 8. On a bad day, I might get closer to 6. But overall, that is serving me quite well. I feel quite good around the 7.5 hour mark, though I wish I could sleep a bit more, because apparently it's really good for you. And we're going to talk about some of the reasons why in a moment. I try to eat within my energy balance. So we try to eat 2100, 2200 calories in a day, which is about what I consume. Maybe a bit more, maybe a bit less, depending on how active I am. Despite working out in the morning most of my day, I will spend sitting and talking and not being physically active. So there's not a huge energy demand on my body and system. I try to eat a lot of vegetables throughout the day. Sometimes I start my day with greens, usually lunch and dinner. Quite a lot of greens that come with dinner and lunch. And I try to eat between 120 to 150 grams of protein. That's about 1.4 to 1.6 times the my body weight in kilograms in protein. Probably I should be at the lower end of that, around 120. But I'm also 41, so building in a little bit of a buffer, even though I understand that, protein synthesis maybe becomes a bit more of a problem after 50. So I've still got 9 years ahead of me. Jared, thanks for dropping by, Jared. I appreciate you dropping by, saying hello. Please stay well, and thanks for saying hi in the chat. On top of that, I show up for strength training with kettlebells here at home. You can watch those streams Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday morning. I show up for some conditioning training also with the kettlebells, and on Sunday mornings I also go for a run and for mobility sessions, which today is Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. I do mobility. If you're interested in any of that, you go ahead, hit subscribe, hit like, follow the channel, and you'll see my sessions popping up in your feed. And you can follow along, or we can have a chat about health and fitness as a skill for a long and healthy life. Let me think about it. What else do I want to say? Oh yeah, I try to spend time with people I love and care about. I try to do things that I enjoy, and generally I try to live a stress-free life. So it's not just working out and eating right and trying to sleep a lot. There are other social and emotional factors that I also try to keep in mind. And this is about the way I feel, not about the way I look. And I think it's important to mention that. Sweet sounds. Your power motivation of these sessions is an important. Oh, sweet sounds. Thanks a lot. I appreciate that, and I appreciate you dropping by and saying hi this morning. Thanks for taking the time to drop by in the chat. And I hope you're doing well where you are in the world, and I hope you're doing good today. Hey, David. Good day. To know how you make your coffee. David, thanks for dropping by. I hope you're doing well. It's good to see you again on the channel. How do I make my coffee? With a little Italian coffee maker at the moment, because the big coffee machine is broken and we're still looking for a replacement, which is a sizable investment. So we have the little Italian coffee machine that you put on the stove. I actually have used it in a couple of recent shorts and videos. So if you actually want to see how I make my coffee, you can browse through my shorts, watch them all, hit like, share them with a friend, and you'll see how I make my coffee. Now, what was I talking about? James. Um, we don't do name calling in the chat. Like I said, I like people to be respectful and kind, and we can talk about health and fitness or other things if they want to. Um, like I always say, for those of you who are watching, there are enough people out there who want to put us down. We can lift ourselves up. So there you have an example of that. This is about the way I feel, not about the way I look. I would like to feel fit, competent, and capable for whatever life is going to throw at me. So if life does throw any big challenge at me, I at least know that I can trust my body to work with me and to be fit and capable to handle the challenge at hand. I also understood, if you want to know the reasons why I invest 30, 60 minutes of my day in training and exercise, I've understood that I might live to be 70, 80, or maybe even into my 90s. But a lot of the final years of life currently are riddled with discomfort and diseases and dependencies on care and other people that could somewhat be mitigated and prevented if we make different lifestyle choices earlier on in life, which is what I'm doing and what I've started to do 7 or 8 years ago, and something that I've gotten very consistent in 2 years ago when our youngest child started to sleep through the night. And the second reason is that we have 2 young children, and I would like to be an active part of their life, not only now but also later, as well as set a good example for them of what health and being a man, being a father, actually is and looks like. And a part of that, I think, is just taking good care of yourself and taking good care of your health and well-being overall. Every time I see coffee in your shorts, yeah, tends to work that way. And my coffee is nothing special, by the way. It's just a regular black cup of double espresso. And that's the way I like my coffee, black, no sugar, no frills. Remember that we're good just the way we are. We've got to love ourselves before we can move on. It's the person we are today, after all. It's going to get us to where we want to be tomorrow. And a bit of kindness to that person is going to go a long way, because they're going to be with us every step of the journey. And there are enough people out there who want to put us down, like I just saw and explained, and you saw in the chat as well why I deleted and blocked the user. So there are enough people out there who want to put us down. No, we lift ourselves up. All right, we don't have to put ourselves down, be too hard on ourselves. And the only way to get anything done, friends, is by showing up and doing the work. So I'm going to start the timer, and we are going to get started with today's mobility session. And while we're doing that, we're going to talk about sleep, because this week's theme is sleep. Last week we talked a lot about nutrition, and this week we're talking about sleep, because sleep is such an important component of health and fitness. We tend to forget about it, but we really shouldn't. And you'll discover why in a moment. All right, breathing in, breathing out. activating that core. Feeling it expand down and out like a balloon, really filling up the stomach. All right, and let's start working on the neck. So, what is sleep and why do we need to be so mindful of it? And I think I saw a new message come in, so I'll just come over and check that in a second. So what is sleep and why do we need to be so mindful of it? Well, first of all, I think we need to think of sleep in two ways. The first, I heard this week on a podcast, and I thought it was an interesting way to define how we might think about sleep. That is that we should think about ourselves as professional sleepers. So just like I have a job that I show up for, and I'm on time, and I put in the hours, we want to show up for sleep on time and put in the hours consistently, as if we're getting paid for it. The second thing I think we need to realize about sleep, just like nutrition, is that sleep is a skill, all right? Sleep is a skill, and wake up. That's a good question. I'll talk about that in a moment for sure. Sleep is a skill, so we want to think of ourselves as professional sleepers. And sleep is a skill because when something is a skill, we can learn about techniques, methods, preparations, tools, and we can get better at it. Just like training is a skill, just like nutrition is a skill, sleep is also a skill. So, look, I will go to bed early because when I put the boys to bed, I will have been up for about 15 hours. I will read for a bit and I will probably fall asleep around that time. So since I hit about 7.5 hours of sleep every night, I am likely falling asleep just after 9 p.m., which means I'm in bed around 8:30 p.m. Now, there are some exceptions to that, some social engagements, some days, some things that cannot escape for work or socially, and that is completely fine as long as around 330 days out of the year I am usually in bed on time to get my sleep. All right? And in about 20 minutes, you're going to understand better why I think this is such a priority. We have 2 kids, and in the first years of both their lives, sleep was a necessity and definitely a luxury. And that taught me a lot about how important the sleep actually is. So, professional sleeper, and sleep is a skill. Why does this matter? Well, because we only get stronger when we are resting. And it's important to keep that in mind. All right? It's important to keep in mind that when it comes to recovering and resting and our body regenerating, growing stronger, getting better, that we really need to sleep well. In fact, I read or heard somewhere that at the end of his career, when Roger Federer was playing tennis at the highest level well into his 30s, he was sleeping more than 10 hours a day. Right? And his ability to sleep so much and so well really helped him perform at a higher level. So in that sense, sleep, whether we want to admit it or not, really is a superpower for our health and fitness. And that's because during sleep, our mind and body regulate all kinds of processes that make us fitter and stronger and healthier and more capable for life. All right, so what are a couple of those processes? Well, some of the outcomes here are that we have more willpower, as in we can exert more self-control, and our overall sense of well-being actually improves when we sleep well. But what happens when we don't sleep well? Well, first of all, one of the adverse effects of a poor night's sleep is that we suffer from a bit of low-grade inflammation. And what happens when we have low-grade inflammation, our immune system is triggered to react to the body signaling that something is wrong. And we start to try to heal that inflammation, which costs energy, but which also is a demand on our system, also taking away from its ability to deal with other things that are happening to our body. So we want to prevent that state as much as possible because we want to keep our body ready and fit and our immune system ready and fit to deal with real threats not just things that are happening because we didn't manage to go to bed on time, or because we went out partying and drinking too much. And you know, this feeling, probably you recognize it. Not only do you feel a bit lethargic, worn out, sluggish and slow after 1 or 2 nights of poor sleep, you do it often enough, you constantly have the sniffles, or you feel slightly off, like you've got a little bug or something is actually bothering you. And the sad thing is that that is probably a manifestation of this immune system being a bit too taxed and not able to deal with all of the threats that life offers us or throws at us. Let's talk about that sluggishness for a moment, because there's also some interesting evidence about sleep, and specifically a lack of sleep, that shows that the part of our brain that really makes us human, the prefrontal cortex, actually doesn't function as well when we don't sleep. So we're less able to think ahead, make decisions, strategize for life, more prone to impulses and base reactions, right? Anger management, we become irritated or irritable, snap at people when we're tired. You know that feeling. You know why that happens. But structurally, even, right, so in the structure of the prefrontal cortex, the structure somehow weaken and change when we do not sleep enough. And I think that is one that we should be even more worried about, because simply by not sleeping enough, a part of our body that we rely on to be able to function well as human beings simply does not function as well and begins to break down structurally when we don't take care of it. And the only way to take care of it properly is through sleep. Alright? So, there you have those insights. But there's more. Why the skill of sleep is so important. Because by some estimates, and estimates vary, but there's good research on this, is that when we don't sleep enough, first of all, we have a desire to eat more fatty foods, which are calorie dense, and therefore it also shouldn't surprise you that not only are more fatty foods consumed, but also more calories are consumed on days where we do not sleep enough. Around 300 to 400. Okay? Now, one day, that's not going to kill you. If that makes sense. But you do that for 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, 6 days, 7 days, 8 days, 9 days. You do that for a month. You suddenly will notice that you've backed on 1 or 2 kilos of excess weight that wasn't there before. And generally, for health and fitness, maintaining a stable weight is a good strategy. In some situations, we want to actually gain weight responsibly or lose weight responsibly. So, adding on that extra weight simply because we are not sleeping is a shame, right? It is something that we have some control over and that we can actually say, well, we would prefer to sleep well rather than diet off that extra weight at a later time, because it's a lot easier to go to bed on time than it is to skip the chocolate bar, wouldn't you say? So we have some real challenges there. All right. Now, when it comes to managing our hormones, let's talk about insulin, leptin, and cortisol, just very briefly, because I'm no endocrinologist or expert. But a lack of sleep, a lack of proper sleep, sufficient sleep, adversely affects our body's ability to produce and regulate hormones like insulin, which is related to how we process blood sugars, right? Leptin, which has something to do with our appetite, and cortisol, which is the stress hormone. So, if you want to give your body a better regulation mechanism, because hormones are the messengers of life, right? They help our body regulate all kinds of processes. So you want to have your body properly regulate itself. Sleeping well is probably going to help you manage your stress, manage your appetite, and manage how you actually process foods. Now, an interesting thing will happen in our brains when we sleep, which is that the brain cells will shrink slightly. Don't worry. They expand again when you wake up. But this shrinking of your brain cells then actually allows the glyphatic system, I think it's called, but again, not an expert in the terminology or a researcher in this area, which allows the brain to flush out all kinds of waste. So there's actually a liquid that flushes through your brain, giving it a nice polish for using it for the next day, because as we work throughout the day, waste builds up in our brain and we need to get rid of that one way or another. So imagine, having all that junk just build up and build up and build up over time because we refuse to sleep properly. Let's see what comes down 20 or 30 years down the line of poor sleep. I don't want to find out. I'll find out what 20 or 30 years of good sleep does for the brain. All right, and now for some of the more important ones, because that's just life in general. But when it comes to health and fitness, obviously we're into exercise. And when we exercise, we need to repair and recover damaged tissue, because we stress the tissue when we exercise. And guess what? When we sleep, we release growth hormone. We repair our muscles. Sleep is generally an anabolic state where our muscles regenerate, repair, grow bigger, and grow stronger if we have the appropriate nutrients and building blocks in our system, which, if you watched my video on nutrition, you'll know how to try to plan for that. So your muscles repair and grow bigger and grow stronger as we sleep. And a lack of sleep will definitely hinder you in that capacity. Okay? So if that's all clear, those are some of the main reasons why sleep, especially when it comes to health, fitness, movement, just is such an important aspect of the equation. So we want to think of sleep as a skill, something we can learn to be good at. And we want to start thinking of ourselves as professional sleepers. We want to get really good at managing the amount and quality of sleep that we get. So there are a couple of simple rules for this, all right? And we'll start with the simple one, which is having a dedicated space that is used only for sleeping. All right, so your bedroom, your bed, you're there and you're using it to rest and go to sleep. And that's what you're doing in bed. No phone, no scrolling, not watching TV, not gaming, no screens, reading, having a sound system in that you play, something that calms and relaxes the mind. That's fine, but overall, You just want that space to be dedicated to sleep. Preferably a separate room, but if you don't have that space, try to put something between that part of the room and the rest of the room, so make it really dedicated to your sleep. All right. Light and dark. The bedroom should be dark, and if you can't get it dark enough for whatever reasons, invest a little bit of money in a good face mask that is comfortable. You know, you have the cheap ones from the airlines for the long haul flights. You have the slightly more expensive ones. Some of them even come with built-in massagers, apparently. You don't have to overdo it, but something that will help you block out the light if good curtains or shutters are beyond the budget. Just block the light from reaching your eyes in a way that doesn't hinder your comfort and temperature in the bedroom. Okay? So make sure that you keep the room at a comfortable temperature. I prefer slightly chilly, because the cooler it is in the room, the better off, the better you're going to end up sleeping. It's just important to keep that in mind. So, it's a space. Then, our ritual before bedtime. How much time do we have before bedtime? Well, if I'm trying to hit 8 hours of sleep, my bedtime starts 9 hours before the intended wake-up time. So that is 5 a.m., midnight, 9, anywhere around 8 p.m. It starts a little bit before that, but let's focus on the immediate ritual first, because that's one of the easier ones to tackle. So what do we do that hour before? Well, try to disconnect, try to minimize stimulus, try to enjoy the time. It's usually a bit of tidying up, setting up the workout space, getting everyone ready for bed, getting ready for bed myself, and reading, telling stories to the kids, and reading, telling stories to myself as well. This one is just incredibly comfortable. I just want to keep in this position a little bit longer. And you're working on that mobility in the hips and ankles. Getting that there we go. All right. So we've got the hour up until the point that we fall asleep. Good. Then we can look at everything that precedes that. All right? You don't have to make all these changes in one go. You can make them gradually over time. Like getting good at everything takes time. Even getting good at sleep can take a year to sort this out, to understand the ups and downs in your natural rhythm, how the seasons affect your sleep, how having long days with lots of sunshine affect your sleep. I tend to sleep a bit less in summer, actually. Um, Something about the sun being out, and also later on in the day, that keeps giving you the energy to keep going. And I tend to sleep a bit more in winter because it's cold and it's comfortable to be under the blankets. So know yourself. Give yourself time to get to know yourself. What works in August doesn't necessarily work in December, doesn't necessarily work in April. All right? And then the hours before your bedtime ritual starts. So the closest to that is snack time and dinner time, right? Post-dinner snacks. You can, better not, especially not alcohol. If you're going to consume alcohol, it's nice to have a 6 to 8 hour window between drinking the alcohol and actually going to sleep. And even then, you might see some interrupted sleep patterns. It's just the fact that groggy feeling that you have in the morning and the interrupted sleep definitely go together, no matter the quantity. All right? Foods. I've heard this a couple of times now, and I am inclined to agree with the take on it, is that we can go to bed a bit hungry. We can go to bed a bit hungry because if we're too hungry, we're going to be craving food. It's going to make it harder to sleep. But if we've eaten sufficiently, but there's room for a bit more, so we have a light feeling in our stomachs, well, we actually tend to sleep better than if we had consumed a heavy meal right before bedtime. Why is that? I can't tell you why that is. I can just tell you that that is, in my experience, the way this works with food. Is that when we have a slightly heavier meal, we tend to need to work harder at night to process it than when we have a light meal. And that means that a light meal works in our favor in terms of relaxing our digestive system. There's also all kinds of research on fasting and how it's good for health and longevity. So being in a fasted state some parts of the day, probably not a bad idea at all. All right, we're going to move on to a little bit of core work, by the way. So just keep that in mind as something that you want to be mindful of, that big heavy meals at the end of the day and good quality of sleep work against each other. And then the big one is, when do we have our last cup of coffee? So what is the moment that we will grab a cup of coffee, because caffeine and stimulants have a direct impact on how well we sleep and how we're going to sleep. So we want to just be very aware of that idea that we want to be very aware of that idea that having that cup of coffee at 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. might adversely affect our ability to actually fall asleep and find that rest, similar to alcohol but a different effect. I have my last cup of coffee at 3 p.m. Yeah, me too. And that's why this is such a challenging one, but an important one to just be mindful of. All right. So we can love our coffee, and we have that first cup of coffee of the day, but we also need to find an acceptable time for that last cup of coffee of the day. And usually 2 or 3 p.m. for me is a good time, because it also depends somewhat on how well you metabolize coffee or caffeine. So some people can drink a cup of coffee right before bed and sleep no problem. I prefer to build in a slight margin of error around 6 hours. So anywhere between 2 and 3 p.m. is where I have the final cup of coffee for the day. And then I'm also good with that. Now, if I have a work event or something in the evening that requires me to be alert, I will have a cup of coffee in the evening to help keep me sharp and keep me going. That's very functional. But I already expect to go to bed at a later time. First. Second, it's absolutely imperative there that I'm actually somewhat sharp. Obviously, because I'm there to work. So, again, there are exceptions to the rules. Okay, I think we've covered just about everything there is to cover about sleep as a skill. So you tell me, any questions you have around sleep or nutrition or anything you want to discuss about health, fitness, or kettlebells. As I wrap up these core exercises, I need to do a little balancing act here. And then that's going to be it. I think we've hit 6 a.m. Yeah, 6 a.m. It's been a good 40 minutes. And I think time well spent this morning talking about sleep and understanding the impact of sleep. definitely feel that. Trying to pull this half of my body down. Of course, working overtime to keep myself upright. And that's a good thing. All right. And the final exercise in a moment before I make that cup of coffee. For those of you who are watching, my name is Toby. I'm 41 years old. I train to live an active, self-sufficient, and adventurous life. I do so by minding my sleep, minding what I eat, and trying to show up for my strength, conditioning, and mobility workouts every day. Something different, resting and recovering, but staying active, giving my body and mind the stimulus to stay strong, stay capable for life. So that's why we're here. That includes a general healthy lifestyle about sleeping well, eating well, moving well, staying hydrated, spending time with people I love and care about, doing things that I enjoy. So hey, if that's something you're interested in, check out my channel, hit like, subscribe. With a little community. I post once a week about things that are going on, things that will happen. I'm here every day for a stream. And I make shorts and videos about these topics and about being a man and a father in life. So if those are things that you're interested in, yeah, you go ahead and check out my channel. All right? Thanks for dropping by. Remember, this is about the way I feel, not about the way I look. I want to feel fit, competent, and capable for whatever life's going to throw at me. We're good just the way we are. We've got to love ourselves before we can move on. There are enough people out there who want to put us down. Let's lift ourselves up. A bit of kindness to ourselves is going to take us a long way, because it's the person we are today who's going to get us to where we want to be tomorrow. Do you have any routines before going to bed? Oh, that's it. Just reading. That's all I do. It's my time to relax and absorb some words in a story. And usually I shut off 2 or 3 pages in. So I hope that answers your question. And David, thanks for dropping by and for the conversation and the comments. And it's good to have seen you again today. Be well today. Stay well. And the only way to get anything done, friends, is by showing up and doing the work. So I will see you tomorrow. All right? Take care. Bye.